The door clicked shut behind her, the soft sound swallowed by the thick silence of the bedroom. Susan stood perfectly still, the weight of the world pressing down on her shoulders. The room, usually a sanctuary of comfort and shared intimacy, felt alien, cold, and empty. The scent of Mike's cologne, usually a comforting presence, was a phantom now, a cruel reminder of the man she thought she knew, the life she thought she had. She sank onto the edge of the bed, the crisp cotton sheets cool against her skin, a stark contrast to the burning heat that coursed through her veins. Her mind raced, a whirlwind of emotions swirling within her: betrayal, anger, confusion, a deep, gnawing uncertainty about her future. The carefully constructed reality she had lived in for years crumbled before her, leaving behind a landscape of devastation. 18 years. 18 years of shared laughter, whispered secrets, intimate moments, all built upon a foundation of lies. 18 years, and the man she loved had kept this secret, a secret of such magnitude that it threatened to shatter everything she held dear. The thought was a physical blow, a punch to the gut that stole the air from her lungs. She gasped, a small, shaky sound lost in the vast emptiness of the room. Tears welled in her eyes, hot and stinging, but she didn't let them fall. Not yet. She needed to think, to process, to somehow make sense of the chaos that raged within her. She clenched her fists, her knuckles white, and focused on her breathing, trying to regain control of the runaway emotions. The image of Mike's face, etched with remorse and anguish, flickered in her mind. She saw the pain in his eyes, the desperate plea for forgiveness. But even that couldn't fully extinguish the flames of anger that burned within her. How could he? How could he keep such a profound secret, a secret that involved another woman, another life, another daughter? The betrayal cut deep, a wound that went beyond infidelity. It was a violation of trust, a shattering of the fundamental building blocks of their relationship. It was the shattering of her belief in the man she had loved, respected, and entrusted with her heart. It was a betrayal that went to the very core of her being, shaking her sense of security to its foundations. She thought of the life she had envisioned, the future they had planned, the dreams they had shared. Now, those dreams felt like distant, unattainable stars, flickering faintly on the horizon of an uncertain future. The path ahead stretched before her, dark and unknown, filled with fear and uncertainty, with the terrifying possibility that everything might fall apart. Her mind wandered to the daughter, Sarah, the girl who had unexpectedly entered their lives, a vibrant, determined young woman who was both a stranger and, somehow, inexplicably familiar. Susan felt a mixture of curiosity and apprehension, a desire to understand her, yet also a deep-seated fear of the changes she would bring to their already fragile world. She considered leaving, the thought a desperate attempt to reclaim some control in a situation where everything felt beyond her grasp. To gather her belongings and walk away, to find a quiet place to heal, to escape the wreckage of her shattered world. Yet, even as the idea took root, a small voice inside her whispered of something else, a glimmer of hope, a faint flicker of resolve. The thought of Mike, his face streaked with tears, his voice choked with remorse, held her back. She thought of his immense guilt, his obvious pain, his genuine desire to atone for his mistake. And somewhere amidst the anger and betrayal, a spark of empathy ignited. She wondered about the young man he had been, the pressures and fears that had driven him to make such a devastating decision. The years couldn't be undone. The secret couldn't be erased. But perhaps, just perhaps, this didn't have to be the end. Perhaps this could be an opportunity to rebuild, to forge a new path, a new understanding. Perhaps this could be an opportunity to grow, not only as individuals but as a family, albeit a family redefined by the sudden and unexpected emergence of a daughter she never knew existed. Hours passed, marked only by the ticking of the clock on the nightstand, a relentless reminder of the time slipping away, the ticking away of the time she had to grapple with this colossal change in her life. She lay there, staring at the ceiling, her heart a heavy weight in her chest. But the overwhelming sense of loss and devastation began to recede, replaced by a cautious curiosity, a nascent desire to understand, a fragile resolve to face the future, however daunting it might be. The silence of the room was not the suffocating silence of shock and grief, but a quieter silence, a silence that held the potential for something new, for growth, for healing. The pain remained, a constant ache, a reminder of the betrayal, but mixed with it now was a tentative glimmer of hope, the faintest whisper of resilience. She would face this, not alone. She would face this with Mike, and with the daughter he had kept hidden for 18 years. She would face this, together. And in the facing, she would find a new strength, a strength she didn't know she possessed, and together, they would face the daunting task of becoming a family again. This new family, forever changed by the revelation of the hidden daughter, Sarah. A family forged in the fires of a profound secret, tested by betrayal, but bound, ultimately, by love, forgiveness, and an enduring hope for a future they would create together. The journey wouldn't be easy, but it was a journey she was prepared to embark on, step by hesitant step. She got up from the bed, her legs still shaky, but her spirit, somehow, a little stronger. The turmoil within her still raged, but it was no longer a tempest of destruction. It was now a storm gradually subsiding, making way for a tentative, uncertain calm. The future remained uncertain, but she had a sense of purpose now, a determination to forge a new path, to rebuild her life, her family, brick by painstaking brick. The road ahead would be long, and undoubtedly fraught with challenges, but she was ready. She would embrace the unknown, for the sake of her family, for the sake of her marriage, and for the sake of the daughter who had suddenly, unexpectedly, become a part of her life. The path forward would demand courage, understanding, and an immense amount of grace, but she was ready to find it within herself, to discover the strength to navigate this unprecedented situation and find a way to survive, and perhaps even thrive. The road to healing and understanding lay before them, and as the first glimmer of sunlight touched the horizon, she knew that together they would begin the journey. Sarah stared out the rain-streaked window of her small apartment, the city lights blurring into a hazy, indistinct glow. 18 years. 18 years she'd lived a life she now knew was only half true. The revelation of her father, Mike, had been a tidal wave, crashing over her carefully constructed reality and leaving behind a wreckage of confusion and uncertainty. She'd known instinctively that something was missing, a piece of her life puzzle stubbornly refusing to fit. The DNA test had confirmed it, shattering the comfortable, albeit incomplete, narrative she'd built for herself. Her phone buzzed, a text message from Mike. "How are you doing, sweetheart? Thinking of you." The words were simple, yet they held a weight that belied their brevity. She typed a response, her fingers hesitant. "I'm okay. It's a lot to process." The lie felt comfortable, the truth. Too raw, too overwhelming. Okay felt like a vast understatement. She was a kaleidoscope of emotions, elated, terrified, angry, hopeful, confused. The simple act of texting her father, a man she'd only just met, felt surreal. The next day, she found herself standing before a house vastly different from her own modest apartment. It was larger, more elegant, exuding an air of comfortable prosperity. This was Mike's home, the place where he lived with Susan, his wife. The thought of meeting her was a source of both trepidation and reluctant curiosity. Susan was the woman who had unwittingly shared 18 years of her husband's life with Sarah's existence hidden away. Meeting her felt like walking a tightrope, each step a precarious balance between hope and fear. The door opened, revealing a woman whose face reflected a mixture of weariness and quiet determination. Susan. She was beautiful, her eyes holding a depth that hinted at the emotional turmoil she must be experiencing. She offered Sarah a tentative smile, a gesture that was both welcoming and guarded. "Sarah," she said, her voice soft but firm, "come in. Mike's waiting for you." The house felt strange, yet somehow familiar. It wasn't the opulent mansion she'd imagined, it was a comfortable family home filled with the quiet hum of daily life. Family photos adorned the walls, a silent testament to a life she hadn't been a part of. Yet, they could have been her family. The laughter felt like a memory. The quiet moments like a longing she never realized she had. Mike embraced her, his hug tight and full of a remorse that was almost palpable. He was a different man than the one she had spoken to on the phone. The weight of his secret, the burden of his past, were etched onto his face. Seeing him surrounded by the family he'd hidden her from felt both deeply upsetting and strangely comforting. The initial awkwardness gave way to tentative conversation, punctuated by long silences filled with unspoken emotions. Meals were a strange blend of forced cheerfulness and underlying tension. Sarah felt like an outsider looking in, a ghost hovering at the edge of a life she longed to be a part of, yet was simultaneously terrified to fully embrace. She saw in Susan's eyes a battle, a silent struggle between anger, fear, and, perhaps, an unexpected glimmer of compassion. Days turned into weeks. Sarah found herself drawn to the quiet rhythms of family life. She helped Susan with household chores, subtly weaving herself into the fabric of their routines. She spent hours talking with Mike, trying to understand the choices he'd made, the reasons behind his silence. He recounted his youth, his fears, his regrets, speaking of the circumstances that had led him to the life he'd been living. He admitted to fear of losing Susan, fear of losing the family he had created. His words were filled with remorse and regret, but also with a deep desire for reconciliation. Yet, the reconciliation wasn't easy. Susan's initial reaction had been a mixture of shock, disbelief, and a deep hurt. The trust that had formed the foundation of their marriage had been shattered. However, over time, as Sarah proved herself to be a kind, intelligent, and responsible young woman, Susan slowly began to soften. Sarah's presence, her grace, and her gentle spirit slowly started to thaw the ice that had formed between her and Mike's wife. There were days when the tension was unbearable. Arguments erupted, silences stretched taut, and the air crackled with unspoken accusations. Sarah felt the weight of her arrival, the disruption she had caused. She considered running away, returning to the familiar solitude of her apartment, but something held her back, a nascent sense of belonging, a flicker of hope that this fractured family could somehow, impossibly, become whole. Sarah began to understand the weight of Mike's secret. It wasn't simply a matter of infidelity, it was a complex web of fear, regret, and a desperate attempt to protect the life he had built with Susan. The weight of that past was palpable, hanging in the air like a thick fog, obscuring the path towards a shared future. She started spending time with Mike's brother, the man who shared her DNA. The revelation of her family was just the beginning of her quest for belonging. Understanding her origins meant accepting the new connections. The brother helped her understand some aspects of her father's past. It was as if pieces of a puzzle were slowly falling into place. Bits of her history slowly emerged, connecting her to a family she never knew existed. One evening, Sarah, Mike, and Susan sat together, the quiet hum of the television a backdrop to their conversation. It wasn't a perfect harmony, but there was a newfound sense of ease. Sarah saw Susan watching her with a mixture of curiosity and warmth. The anger still flickered in her eyes, but it was far less intense. "I never intended to hurt anyone," Mike whispered, his gaze falling on Susan's hand, her fingers laced through his. "I was young, scared, and I made the wrong choices." Susan squeezed his hand, her eyes glistening. "I know," she said softly, "but we're here now. We're all here, together. And that's what matters." That night, as Sarah lay in the guest room, the comfortable silence was different than the previous weeks. It was no longer filled with the undercurrent of resentment, it was filled with a nascent hope and a sense of tentative peace. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. Healing would take time. There would be moments of anger and frustration. There would be days when the past would rear its ugly head, reminding them of the betrayal and the pain. But for the first time, Sarah felt a glimmer of hope that this new, unusual family, forged in the fires of a long-hidden secret might find a way to thrive. The future remained uncertain, but tonight, under the quiet stars, Sarah allowed herself to dream of a future where she belonged, a future where she was finally, completely, home. She closed her eyes, a small smile playing on her lips. She had a family now, a complicated, flawed, but undeniably real family. And that, she realized, was something worth fighting for. The sterile scent of antiseptic and the muted beige of Dr. Anya Sharma's office did little to ease the tension that hung heavy in the air. Mike sat rigidly on the plush sofa, his hands clasped tightly in his lap, his gaze fixed on the worn Persian rug. Beside him, Susan sat with her arms crossed, her posture conveying a mixture of defiance and weariness. Sarah, perched on the armrest of the chair, felt like a silent observer in a drama she hadn't written but was forced to star in. Dr. Sharma, a woman whose calm demeanor belied the depth of her understanding, began the session gently. "So, it's been several weeks since Sarah joined your family. How have things been progressing?" Mike was the first to speak, his voice a low murmur. "It's complicated. There are good days and bad days. Some days, it feels like we're making progress, and other days it feels like we're just treading water." Susan's lips tightened. "Treading water is a generous assessment. Some days, I feel like I'm drowning." Her voice was sharp, laced with a bitterness that resonated in the quiet room. The unspoken accusations hung in the air, a palpable weight that pressed down on all of them. Dr. Sharma nodded sympathetically. "That's understandable. This is a monumental upheaval in all your lives. Sarah, how are you feeling about all of this?" Sarah hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "It's overwhelming. I'm grateful to be a part of your lives, but it's also incredibly difficult. I feel like I'm constantly walking on eggshells, afraid of saying or doing the wrong thing." She looked at Susan, her eyes filled with a mixture of apprehension and genuine remorse. "I know I've disrupted your lives, and I feel terrible about it." The silence that followed was heavy, laden with the weight of unspoken emotions. Dr. Sharma waited patiently, giving them space to process their feelings before gently guiding the conversation. "It's natural to feel overwhelmed, Sarah, and it's important to acknowledge that this is a significant adjustment for everyone involved. Susan, can you tell me more about your feelings of being overwhelmed?" Susan unfurled her arms, her shoulders slumping slightly. "It's the betrayal, I think," she confessed, her voice cracking. 18 years. 18 years of a life I thought I knew, of a man I thought I knew. And now this." She gestured vaguely towards Sarah, her eyes reflecting a complex mix of anger, sadness, and a flicker of something else, curiosity, perhaps. "The trust is broken," she continued, her voice stronger now, laced with a determined edge. "It's not just about the affair, it's about the lies, the omissions, the deliberate deception. It's about the fact that he could keep something so monumental from me for so long." Mike winced, his gaze falling to his hands. "I know, and I'm truly sorry. I was young, scared, and made terrible choices. I never wanted to hurt anyone, especially you, Susan. I was terrified of losing you." Dr. Sharma intervened gently. "Mike, it's important to acknowledge Susan's feelings without trying to justify your actions. The pain she feels is valid, and it's crucial that you listen and understand that." The following sessions were a careful dance of confrontation and reconciliation. They explored the dynamics of their relationships, delving into the roots of Mike's fear, Susan's hurt, and Sarah's confusion. Each session brought its own set of challenges. There were tears, outbursts of anger, and moments of profound understanding. One session focused on Mike's past. He shared details about his relationship with Sarah's mother, a young woman he had loved deeply but felt unprepared to parent with. His fear of losing his freedom and his ambition had led him to abandon her, a decision he now deeply regretted. He confessed his reluctance to deal with his parental responsibilities and the intense burden of guilt and regret that had followed him for nearly 2 decades. He spoke of the silent bargain he'd struck with himself, sacrificing a relationship with his daughter to preserve the life he had carefully built with Susan. Susan, in turn, shared her own vulnerabilities. She confessed her initial fury and pain, her feelings of violation and mistrust. But she also acknowledged her own capacity for empathy and forgiveness. She spoke about the fear of losing Mike, and the difficult process of accepting Sarah into their lives, building a new dynamic in their family. She admitted that part of her wanted to punish Mike, but also part of her wanted to understand his perspective and move forward. She expressed a desire to build a relationship with her stepdaughter, a slow and deliberate process filled with both hope and trepidation. Sarah, too, participated actively in the sessions. She shared her feelings of abandonment, the lingering sense of incompleteness that had plagued her for years. She spoke about the joy of discovering her father, but also the anxieties of entering a family dynamic that she had only ever dreamt of. She voiced her own reservations about their potential forgiveness and the future of their relationship. She spoke of her desire to build a meaningful relationship with both Mike and Susan, but acknowledged that this would take time and patience and a lot of hard work. As the sessions progressed, a subtle shift occurred. The sharp edges of anger began to soften. The accusations lessened, replaced by a tentative exploration of understanding. Mike learned to express his remorse without defensiveness. Susan learned to articulate her hurt without blame. Sarah learned to express her needs and vulnerabilities without apology. Dr. Sharma provided a safe space for their emotions to surface, guiding them towards healthier communication patterns. Through this process of guided introspection, the family started to heal, step by fragile step. They learned to listen to each other, to validate each other's feelings, and to forgive. The journey wasn't easy. There were setbacks, moments of frustration, and recurring waves of anger and sadness. But through it all, they held on to the glimmer of hope that had ignited in those initial hesitant conversations. They were still far from perfect. There were days when the old wounds opened, days when the past threatened to engulf them once more. But they had learned to navigate these difficult moments with greater understanding, greater compassion, and a renewed commitment to each other. The family therapy sessions weren't a quick fix, a magical solution to their problems. Instead, they were a crucial step, a journey of self-discovery and emotional healing that would continue long after they left Dr. Sharma's office. The process was arduous, but necessary healing was a continuous process, not a destination. The road ahead remained long, yet the shared journey, though fraught with challenges, forged a bond between them, a tentative acceptance of their complicated, imperfect, but ultimately real family. The first family dinner was a disaster, a silent battlefield littered with unspoken anxieties and strained smiles. The meticulously prepared lasagna sat untouched, a monument to Susan's effort and Mike's guilt. Sarah, perched awkwardly on the edge of her chair, picked at her food, her eyes darting between her father and stepmother, a silent plea for connection hanging in the air. The conversation was stilted, punctuated by awkward silences and forced pleasantries. The comfortable rhythm of their previous life felt shattered, replaced by an uneasy truce. Later, alone in their bedroom, Susan confronted Mike. "It was awful, Mike. Absolutely awful. I feel like we're living a lie." Tears welled in her eyes, a mixture of hurt and frustration. She barely touched her food. "And you just sat there, looking like a guilty dog." Mike sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. "I know, Susan. I know it was bad. I don't know what to do. I'm trying, I really am." He reached out to touch her, but she flinched away. "Trying isn't enough, Mike," she said, her voice trembling. "This isn't just about me anymore. It's about Sarah. She deserves better than this awkward, stilted charade." The next attempt at family bonding was a picnic in the park. This time, there was a different energy. Susan, consciously making an effort, brought Sarah's favorite frisbee. Mike, shedding some of his reticence, initiated a game of catch, his throws clumsy but heartfelt. Sarah, initially hesitant, gradually relaxed, her laughter echoing through the park as she joined in the game. It wasn't perfect. There were moments of silence, lingering glances of uncertainty, but it was a start, a small, tentative step towards something resembling a family. Over the following weeks, they made a conscious effort to incorporate Sarah into their routine. Sunday brunch became a regular event, filled with lighter conversations and shared laughter. Mike made a point of spending individual time with Sarah, taking her to her favorite coffee shop, engaging in conversations that went beyond surface pleasantries. He asked about her friends, her classes, her aspirations, listening intently, truly interested in getting to know the young woman she was. He was learning about a part of his life he had missed entirely, a life full of dreams and aspirations, filled with experiences and hardships. Susan, too, made efforts. She found herself drawn to Sarah's quiet strength and resilience, her intelligence and creativity. She started to see her not as a threat, but as a person who had endured far too much and deserved love and support. She invited Sarah to help her with a volunteer project for a local animal shelter, giving them a shared activity outside of the family dynamic. These small acts of kindness, these gestures of inclusion, slowly began to chip away at the wall of resentment and suspicion that had separated them. It wasn't a quick fix, a magical transformation. There were still moments of friction, instances where old wounds reopened. One evening, a casual comment about family vacations triggered a fresh wave of anger in Susan, reminding her of all the years Mike had spent without her. But, this time, the anger was less intense, less accusatory. The ability to talk things through, to discuss concerns rather than accuse, seemed to have emerged as a new family function. Sarah, sensing the shift in dynamics, started opening up more. She shared stories about her childhood, her struggles, her dreams. She spoke of the longing she'd felt for a family, a longing that had been both a source of pain and a driving force behind her quest to find her father. She spoke candidly of her fears, her anxieties, and her hopes for the future, trusting in their ability to accept and understand. She spoke of the sense of belonging that had once felt impossible, now seeming just within reach. One Saturday, they went to a baseball game, a quintessential American family outing. Mike, a lifelong baseball fan, happily explained the rules to Sarah, whose knowledge of the sport was limited. Susan, surprisingly, engaged in the game with surprising enthusiasm, sharing a laugh with Mike over a particularly bad play. Sarah, watching their interaction, a subtle smile playing on her lips, felt a sense of belonging wash over her. It wasn't a perfect game, they didn't win, but the shared experience, the laughter, the comfortable silences. It was a moment of genuine connection, a fleeting glimpse of the family they were building. Dinner conversations became more natural, less strained. They started sharing anecdotes from their days, discussing their hobbies, and engaging in light-hearted banter. There were still moments of awkwardness and stilted conversation, but there was also a growing sense of comfort, a shared understanding that was gradually forming. The air around them felt lighter, less burdened by the weight of unspoken accusations. The healing process was slow, gradual, almost imperceptible at times. There were setbacks, moments of doubt, and the lingering shadow of the past. But they were moving forward, inching their way towards a future where they could embrace their complex reality and forge a connection that transcended the secrets and lies that had once defined their lives. It wasn't about erasing the past, it was about acknowledging it, understanding it, and finding a way to move forward together. They started attending family therapy less frequently. The sessions became more about maintaining progress rather than resolving the initial crisis. Dr. Sharma's role shifted to that of a supportive guide, offering occasional advice and encouragement as they navigated the complexities of their newfound family unit. The holidays were a significant test. Thanksgiving dinner was a far cry from the tense meal that had marked their first attempt at family togetherness. There was laughter, shared stories, and a genuine sense of camaraderie. Christmas was even more poignant. The exchange of gifts felt less like a formality and more like an expression of affection and connection. Sarah received a heartfelt gift from Susan, a beautiful handmade scarf, a silent testament to the acceptance and understanding that had begun to flourish between them. Evenings around the dinner table continued to evolve, becoming less about formal occasions and more about comfortable routines. Mike started sharing stories from his childhood, offering Sarah glimpses into a past that had been deliberately absent from her life. Susan, encouraged by the growing bond between Mike and Sarah, spoke more openly about her own life, her hopes and dreams. Sarah, encouraged by the love and acceptance she felt within her family, began sharing her goals and plans for the future. Building this bridge of understanding between them involved patience, kindness, and an unwavering commitment to their collective well-being. It was not about forgetting the past, but about learning to live with it. It was not about ignoring the wounds, but about tending to them with understanding and forgiveness. The journey had only just begun, but the path they were forging together, however challenging, was filled with the promise of a brighter, more unified future. The family was imperfect, their bond fragile and new, but it was a bond nonetheless, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the enduring power of love and acceptance. The future still held uncertainties, but the hope of a functional, loving family now felt like a genuine possibility. The rift between Mike and his brother Mark had been a silent, festering wound for years, a consequence of unspoken resentments and competitive sibling rivalry. Mark, always the more successful and outgoing one, had always seemed to effortlessly glide through life, while Mike, burdened by self-doubt and a fear of failure, felt perpetually in his shadow. The revelation of Sarah had, unexpectedly, become a catalyst for reconciliation. Faced with the shared responsibility of Sarah's well-being, the brothers found common ground they hadn't known existed. Their first conversation after the initial shock was tense, a careful dance around accusations and unspoken grievances. Mark, initially defensive, gradually softened, his anger giving way to a reluctant empathy. He confessed his own feelings of guilt for not reaching out sooner, for allowing the distance to grow between them. He admitted he'd always envied Mike's quiet strength, his capacity for deep connection, something Mark struggled to achieve himself. The shared burden of Sarah brought them closer. Mike, in turn, acknowledged his own shortcomings, his tendency to withdraw, his competitive spirit that had fueled their estrangement. He spoke of his regret, the missed opportunities, the years of silence that had allowed a small crack in their relationship to become a gaping chasm. He apologized for the resentment he'd harbored, for the silent competition that had defined their relationship for so long. The conversation, held in the quiet solitude of a local pub, over pints of dark beer, marked the beginning of a fragile reconciliation. Over the following months, the brothers slowly rebuilt their relationship, their meetings initially awkward and hesitant, but gradually growing more relaxed and comfortable. They started with small gestures, a phone call, a shared lunch, a weekend fishing trip. The shared activity became a backdrop for genuine conversation, helping them to reconnect beyond the layers of resentment. The silence that once stretched between them like an unbridgeable chasm began to be filled with shared memories and newfound understanding. Meanwhile, Mike and Susan's relationship, though strained, was steadily healing. Susan, having initially struggled to accept Sarah, began to understand Mike's perspective. She saw the depth of his regret, the genuine remorse he felt for the pain he had caused. His efforts to include Sarah in their lives, his willingness to face his past, won her respect and, gradually, her trust. Their reconciliation wasn't sudden or easy. It involved late-night talks, tears, and heartfelt apologies. They began attending couples counseling, where they worked through the anger, the betrayal, and the deep-seated insecurities that had threatened to tear them apart. The settings for their conversations were varied, reflecting the evolution of their relationship. Early conversations took place in the sterile environment of the therapist's office, their words careful and measured. Later, they found themselves talking more freely during long evening walks, the rhythm of their footsteps matching the cadence of their conversation. A weekend getaway to the coast provided a backdrop for more intimate conversations, the vastness of the ocean mirroring the depth of their emotions. The conversations transitioned from accusations and recriminations to vulnerability and understanding. Susan learned to articulate her pain, to voice her insecurities without fear of judgment. Mike, in turn, listened, acknowledging her pain, validating her feelings. They found themselves connecting on a deeper level, rediscovering the intimacy that had been lost amidst the turmoil. Simple gestures of affection, a touch, a shared smile, a quiet moment of connection became more frequent, representing a slow and steady rebuilding of their bond. The shared responsibility of raising Sarah, a responsibility that initially threatened to tear them apart, now bound them together. One particularly poignant moment occurred during a family trip to the beach. As they built a sandcastle, a shared project that required collaboration and compromise, Mike and Susan found themselves laughing and joking together, the carefree energy of childhood momentarily washing away the years of tension. It was a small moment, a brief glimpse into a future where the family, however unconventional, could find peace. Sarah, witnessing the tenderness between her parents, felt a sense of relief and a flicker of hope for her future. The changes weren't limited to private moments. Family dinners, once a source of silent tension, transformed into occasions for laughter and conversation. Sarah, having initially felt like an outsider, began to integrate into the family dynamic, her contributions valued and her opinions respected. The routine of daily life, punctuated by shared meals and common activities, became a foundation for their evolving bond. The conversations around the dinner table became more natural, less contrived. They shared stories from their respective days, discussed their hobbies, and started engaging in light-hearted banter. It wasn't a perfect picture, there were still moments of awkwardness and stilted conversations, but the air around them felt lighter, less burdened by the weight of unspoken accusations. There was a growing sense of comfort, a shared understanding that was slowly, steadily forming. The journey wasn't without its setbacks. There were disagreements, misunderstandings, and moments when old wounds threatened to reopen. But they learned to navigate these challenges with newfound empathy and patience. They developed a shared vocabulary for expressing their feelings, fostering open communication that was absent before. They had created a new form of family communication. They were learning to communicate in a healthy way, something that would take consistent work and commitment. Over time, the family unit evolved, strengthening and deepening. The unspoken tension that once filled their interactions had gradually given way to a comfortable, relaxed atmosphere. The bond between them, initially forged in the midst of crisis and uncertainty, was now solidifying into something stronger, more enduring. The family's ability to forgive, to understand, to accept, was the most surprising and rewarding outcome of their journey, a testament to the remarkable capacity of human resilience and the ability to navigate even the pas d'un, most complex familial traumas. The holidays became more meaningful, the celebrations less fraught with anxiety and more filled with genuine joy and appreciation. Christmas morning, instead of being marked by stilted pleasantries and forced smiles, was filled with laughter, the warmth of shared moments, and the simple pleasure of being together. The exchange of gifts felt less like a formality and more like an expression of affection and connection. The family dynamic had shifted from guarded and tense to open and loving. The Christmas meal became a symbol of their success. They were, surprisingly, a family. As the years passed, the family continued to evolve, their bond becoming stronger and more resilient. They faced new challenges, experienced new joys, but always remained united by their shared experience, their collective resilience, and their unwavering commitment to each other. They had transformed, they had healed, and most importantly, they had found love and understanding in the most unexpected places. Their story was a testament to the restorative power of forgiveness, the strength of family bonds, and the unwavering human capacity for love and acceptance. Their journey, while complex and challenging, ultimately led them to a place of peace, a place where the scars of the past served as a reminder of their remarkable journey towards healing and wholeness. They found their family and embraced it. The future held unknowns, but they faced them together, unified and stronger than ever before.